the scorching sun of Egypt's Saqqara necropolis, a newly uncovered tomb hides deadly secrets. When wealthy financier Sir Reginald Ashbourne is found murdered with an ancient dagger, Hercule Poirot steps into a web of greed, betrayal, and hidden pasts. A jealous wife, a driven archaeologist, a desperate assistant, a secretive scholar, and a nosy journalist all harbor motives, and the desert sands conceal clues. As another attack strikes the camp, Poirot's little gray cells unravel a chilling conspiracy, proving no secret can stay buried forever. Chapter 1. The Sands of Suspicion. The sun hung low over the desolate expanse of Saqqara, its relentless heat shimmering across the dunes and bathing the ancient necropolis in a golden haze. The step pyramid, that silent sentinel of antiquity, loomed in the distance, its weathered stones whispering tales of pharaohs long forgotten. Hercule Poirot, impeccable in a cream linen suit despite the oppressive climate, stood at the edge of the archaeological encampment, his polished shoes dusted faintly with sand. His mustache, meticulously waxed, quivered as he adjusted his broad-brimmed hat to shield his eyes from the glare. He had not come to Egypt for the romance of ruins, nor for the allure of lost treasures, but at the urgent summons of Sir Reginald Ashbourne, a man whose wealth was matched only by his penchant for meddling in affairs beyond his expertise. The camp bustled with purposeful chaos. Tents of white canvas dotted the landscape, their guy ropes taut against the occasional gusts that carried fine grains of sand. Egyptian workers, their faces wrapped in cloth to guard against the dust, moved with quiet efficiency, hauling baskets of earth from the mouth of a newly uncovered tomb. Dr. Evelyn Carver, the expedition's lead archaeologist, stood at the center of the activity, her khaki attire practical yet commanding. Her sharp voice cut through the hum of labor as she directed a worker to handle a shard of pottery with care. Gently, now, that's Fifth Dynasty, not some market trinket. Her dark hair was pulled tightly beneath a wide-brimmed hat, and her eyes, though tired, gleamed with the fervor of discovery. Nearby, Thomas Redfern, her young assistant, scribbled furiously in a leather-bound notebook, his fair skin reddened by the sun. He glanced up occasionally, his expression a mix of awe and anxiety, as if the weight of the expedition rested on his narrow shoulders. Under a shaded canopy, Lady Beatrice Ashbourne reclined on a cushioned chair, her silk dress an impractical choice for the desert, but a testament to her status. She fanned herself languidly with a lacquered fan, her delicate features betraying a restlessness that belied her poised exterior. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, darted from person to person, missing nothing. Across the camp, Professor Klaus Werner, a German epigrapher with a stern countenance, stood in heated discussion with Ibrahim Khalil, the local overseer. Werner's thick accent carried over the wind as he gestured at a crate of artifacts. "This is not proper protocol. These must be catalogued before they are moved." Ibrahim, a wiry man with a weathered face, responded in measured tones, his hands raised in a gesture of appeasement. Poirot noted the tension between them, his mind already cataloging the dynamics of this eclectic group. The final member of the party, Margaret Maggie Trent, an American journalist with a penchant for bold patterns and bolder questions, prowled the camp with a notebook clutched like a weapon. Her auburn hair glinted in the sunlight, and her quick smile masked a relentless curiosity. She had been dispatched by her New York paper to cover the excavation, which promised to unveil the tomb of Vizier Keemwasset, a figure shrouded in historical obscurity. Maggie's presence, Poirot observed, was met with mixed reception. Admiration from Thomas, wariness from Dr. Carver, and outright disdain from Lady Beatrice. Poirot had been invited to the dig not as a guest but as a detective. Over a glass of chilled mint tea served by a silent Egyptian boy, Sir Reginald had confided his concerns. The financier, a stout man with a florid complexion and a penchant for gold cufflinks, had drawn Poirot aside that morning. "Monsieur Poirot," he had said, his voice low and urgent, "there is something amiss here. Small artifacts, scarabs, amulets have gone missing from the storage tent. Nothing major, but enough to unsettle me. And last night I overheard an argument near the tomb. I couldn't catch the words, but the tone was menacing. I fear someone in this camp harbors ill intent." Poirot had listened in silence, his green eyes narrowing as he sipped his tea. "You suspect theft, perhaps sabotage, mon ami?" he had asked. Sir Reginald had nodded, his fingers drumming nervously on the arm of his chair. "Or worse. I trust you, Poirot, to uncover the truth before this expedition unravels." Now, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, Poirot strolled through the camp, his hands clasped behind his back. Captain Hastings, his faithful companion who had joined the expedition with dreams of adventure, trailed behind, mopping his brow with a handkerchief. "Dashed hot, isn't it, Poirot? Makes one wonder why anyone would choose to dig in this inferno." Poirot smiled faintly. "The desert, mon cher Hastings. It holds secrets that men will brave any discomfort to uncover. But it is not the heat that troubles me. It is the chill of deceit." As night fell, the camp settled into an uneasy quiet, broken only by the distant howl of a jackal. Poirot retired to his tent, his mind alive with the day's observations. The little gray cells, as he called them, were already at work, sifting through the glances, the words, the silences of the camp's inhabitants. He sensed a storm brewing beneath the surface, a tangle of motives waiting to be unraveled. Then, in the dead of night, a scream tore through the silence, a woman's cry, sharp and piercing. Poirot was out of his cot in an instant, his dressing gown hastily thrown over his pajamas. He emerged into the cool desert air to find the camp in disarray. Lanterns bobbed as workers and expedition members gathered near the tomb's entrance. There, sprawled in the sand, lay Sir Reginald Ashbourne, his lifeless eyes staring at the stars. A ceremonial dagger, its hilt encrusted with lapis lazuli and gold, protruded from his chest, glinting malevolently in the flickering light. Poirot knelt beside the body, his expression grave. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, "the storm, it has broken." Chapter 2. The Scene of the Crime. The desert night was cold, a stark contrast to the day's blistering heat, and the stars above Saqqara glittered with an indifferent clarity. The encampment, moments ago cloaked in silence, now pulsed with a chaotic energy, as the expedition team gathered around the grim tableau at the tomb's entrance. Sir Reginald Ashbourne lay sprawled in the sand, his lifeless form illuminated by the wavering glow of lanterns held aloft by trembling hands. The ceremonial dagger, its blade buried deep in his chest, gleamed with an eerie beauty, its lapis lazuli inlays catching the light like fragments of a forgotten sky. Hercule Poirot, his dressing gown tied neatly despite the hour, knelt beside the body, his gloved hands hovering over the scene with the precision of a surgeon. His green eyes, sharp and unyielding, took in every detail, while behind him Captain Hastings stood agape, his face pale beneath the brim of his hat. "Good heavens, Poirot," Hastings whispered, his voice tight with shock. "Who could have done this, and with such a weapon?" Poirot did not reply at once. His attention was fixed on the dagger, an artifact of exquisite craftsmanship, its hilt adorned with intricate carvings of lotus flowers and scarabs. He noted the angle of the blade, the lack of blood spatter on the surrounding sand, and the peculiar stillness of Sir Reginald's body, as if he had not struggled. "This," Poirot murmured, "is no ordinary murder. It is a performance staged with care. But for whom?" Dr. Evelyn Carver pushed through the crowd, her face ashen but her voice steady. "That dagger," she said, her eyes fixed on the weapon. "It's from the tomb of Vizier Caemoisset. We catalogued it only 2 days ago. It was locked in the storage tent." Her words carried a note of disbelief, and Poirot's gaze flickered to her, noting the slight tremor in her hands. "Locked, you say, madame?" Poirot's voice was soft, but it cut through the murmurs of the crowd like a blade. "Yet here it is, plunged into the heart of Sir Reginald. Most curious." Inspector Farouk, the local police officer summoned from Cairo, arrived with 2 constables, their footsteps heavy in the sand. A tall man with a stern demeanor, Farouk surveyed the scene with a practiced eye. "No one leaves the camp," he declared, his accent clipped. "Monsieur Poirot, you have experience in such matters. Will you assist?" Poirot inclined his head. "Mais oui, Inspector. The little grey cells, they are at your service." He rose, brushing sand from his knees, and turned to the assembled group. Lady Beatrice Ashbourne stood at the edge of the circle, her silk shawl clutched tightly around her shoulders, her face a mask of grief. Thomas Redfern, the young assistant, hovered nearby, his notebook forgotten in his hand, his eyes wide with horror. Professor Klaus Werner, his expression unreadable, stood apart, his arms crossed. Ibrahim Khalil, the overseer, muttered prayers in Arabic, his fingers tracing the beads of a tasbih. Maggie Trent, ever the journalist, scribbled furiously in her notebook, her lips pursed in concentration. Poirot's gaze lingered on each face, searching for the telltale flicker of guilt, fear, or calculation. "The murder," he announced, "was no act of impulse. The choice of the dagger, the place, the hour, all speak of deliberation. We must ask, who had access to this relic, and who desired Sir Reginald's death?" Hastings, still shaken, ventured a theory. "Perhaps a thief, Poirot? Sir Reginald mentioned missing artifacts. Maybe he caught someone in the act and they turned on him." Poirot's mustache twitched. "A possibility, mon ami, but unlikely. The wound is precise, a single thrust to the heart. There is no sign of a struggle, no disarray in the sand. Non, this was no panicked reaction. This was an execution." Inspector Farouk ordered a body covered and removed to a tent for examination, while Poirot turned his attention to the ground around the tomb's entrance. The sand, disturbed by the crowd, yielded little, but near the edge of the excavated steps, he spotted a faint impression, a partial footprint, too small to belong to a man of Sir Reginald's size. He crouched, his fingers tracing the outline. "Most interesting," he murmured. "The sand, it tells a story, if one knows how to read it." Dr. Carver approached, her brow furrowed. "Monsieur Poirot, the dagger's presence troubles me. The storage tent is secured with a padlock, and only 3 people have keys, myself, Ibrahim, and Thomas. I checked the tent myself before retiring last night. Everything was in order." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And yet, madame, the dagger is here. Either the lock was breached or the key was used. We shall see." He moved to the tomb's entrance, a dark maw carved into the earth, its stone lintel etched with faded hieroglyphs. The air within was cool and musty, carrying the scent of ancient stone. Poirot did not enter but studied the threshold, noting scuff marks on the steps. "Someone was here tonight," he said to Hastings. "Perhaps Sir Reginald, perhaps another. But why meet here, in the shadow of the tomb?" Lady Beatrice, her voice tremulous, spoke up. Reginald often walked at night. He said the desert air cleared his mind. Perhaps he stumbled upon something. Poirot turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Or perhaps, madame, he was summoned. A rendezvous, planned and fatal." The crowd dispersed under Inspector Farouk's orders, but Poirot lingered, his mind racing. He recalled Sir Reginald's words about the argument he had overheard the previous night. Venomous, secretive. Had it been a prelude to this crime? And the missing artifacts, were they a motive, a distraction, or something else entirely? As dawn broke, painting the horizon in shades of rose and amber, Poirot returned to the storage tent with Dr. Carver and Ibrahim. The padlock hung intact, but a closer inspection revealed faint scratches around the keyhole, suggesting it had been forced. Inside, the shelves were lined with artifacts, pottery, amulets, fragments of papyrus. But Poirot's attention was drawn to a small wooden box, its lid ajar. Within, a space where the dagger had rested was empty, and beside it lay a broken clay seal, its surface stamped with the cartouche of Caillemouasset. "This seal," Poirot said, holding it to the light. "It was broken recently. The edges are sharp, the clay still damp. Someone entered this tent before the murder, with purpose." Ibrahim shook his head. "I locked the tent myself last night, Monsieur Poirot. No one reported it open." Dr. Carver's face tightened. "If someone used my key, they did so without my knowledge. I keep it on my person at all times." Poirot nodded, his mind cataloging the possibilities. A stolen key, a forced lock, or an inside betrayal. Each pointed to a different thread in the tapestry of the crime. He turned to Hastings, who was examining the tent's canvas walls for signs of tampering. "What do you make of it, mon ami?" Hastings frowned. "It's dashed peculiar, Poirot. The lock wasn't picked, and the tent's intact. Whoever took the dagger knew exactly where to find it." "Précisément," Poirot replied. "And that, Hastings, is the heart of the matter. The killer is among us, hiding in plain sight. But they have made one mistake. They have underestimated Hercule Poirot." As the camp stirred to life, Poirot resolved to begin his interrogations. The dagger, the footprint, the broken seal. These were the first pieces of the puzzle. But the truth, he knew, lay in the hearts and secrets of those around him. The desert, with its ancient tombs and shifting sands, held its silence. But Poirot's little gray cells were already weaving order from chaos. Chapter 3. Motives in the Dust. The morning sun climbed over the Saqqara necropolis, its rays piercing the haze of dust that hung over the encampment like a shroud. The air was thick with the scent of sand and the faint tang of coffee brewing over a camp stove. But the usual hum of activity was subdued, the workers moving with a wary quiet under the weight of Sir Reginald Ashbourne's murder. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in a fresh linen suit, stood outside his tent, his hands clasped behind his back as he surveyed the scene. The murder had cast a pall over the expedition, and the faces of its members betrayed a tangle of emotions: grief, fear, suspicion. Poirot's green eyes, sharp as a falcon's, missed none of it. He knew that to unravel this crime, he must probe the hearts of those around him, for motives, like the artifacts buried in the desert, lay hidden beneath the surface. Captain Hastings emerged from his tent, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Poirot, old chap, I hardly slept a wink. The idea of a killer among us. It's enough to make one's blood run cold, even in this heat." Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. "The heart, mon ami. It is a restless thing. It betrays itself in the smallest gestures, a glance, a hesitation. Today we shall listen, and the truth will begin to speak." Poirot began his interrogations in the shaded interior of Lady Beatrice Ashbourne's tent, where the air was heavy with the scent of jasmine perfume. She sat on a cushioned chair, her silk dress pristine despite the desert's dust, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her delicate features were drawn, her eyes red-rimmed from tears, yet there was a steel in her posture that intrigued Poirot. He settled opposite her, his demeanor courteous but probing. "Madame," he began, his voice smooth as polished stone, "you have lost a husband, and for that I offer my sympathies. But I must ask, how was your marriage to Sir Reginald in these final days?" Lady Beatrice's lips tightened, and she dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. "It was strained, Monsieur Poirot. Reginald was consumed by this excavation. He spent hours with Dr. Carver, discussing artifacts and funding, while I was left to endure the heat and boredom. I am no scholar, you see. I came to support him, but he seemed to forget me." Poirot leaned forward, his eyes fixed on hers. "And did this cause resentment, perhaps, or jealousy?" Her gaze faltered, and she looked away, her fingers twisting the handkerchief. "I was not jealous, if that's what you imply. But I knew Reginald had changed his will recently. He told me he intended to leave a significant portion of his fortune to the expedition to ensure its continuation. I thought it excessive, but I had no say in the matter." Poirot nodded, filing away this revelation. "One final question, madam. Where were you last night, when Sir Reginald met his fate?" "I was in my tent," she replied quickly. "I retired early, exhausted from the day. I heard nothing until the scream woke me." Poirot thanked her and withdrew, his mind turning over her words. The will, the distance in her marriage. Here were threads of motive, but were they enough to weave a murder? Next, he sought Dr. Evelyn Carver. Finding her in the work tent, surrounded by crates of artifacts. Her khaki shirt was stained with sweat, and her hands moved with precision as she examined a fragment of pottery. She looked up as Poirot entered, her expression guarded. "Monsieur Poirot, I hope you're here to tell me we can resume our work soon. This delay is intolerable." Poirot smiled faintly. "The pursuit of truth, madame, it requires patience. Tell me, what was your relationship with Sir Reginald?" Dr. Carver set down the pottery shard, her movements deliberate. "He was our patron, nothing more. His money made this excavation possible, but he was no archaeologist. He wanted results too quickly, risking damage to the artifacts. We argued often about his haste." "And these arguments," Poirot pressed, "did they ever turn personal?" Her eyes flashed with irritation. "If you're suggesting an improper connection, you're mistaken. My only interest was the tomb. Sir Reginald respected my expertise, but he could be overbearing. That's all. Poirot noted the defensiveness in her tone, the way her hands clenched briefly. And last night, where were you? In my tent, cataloging notes, she said. I worked late and heard nothing unusual until the commotion began. As Poirot left the tent, he encountered Thomas Redfern, hovering near the entrance, his notebook clutched to his chest. The young man's face was pale, his eyes darting nervously. Poirot gestured for him to sit on a nearby crate. Monsieur Redfern, you seem troubled. Tell me, what was Sir Reginald to you? Thomas swallowed hard, his voice unsteady. He was kind to me, Monsieur Poirot. He paid for my studies when my family could not, but he held it over me like a debt I could never repay. He'd remind me of it whenever I disagreed with him. A debt, Poirot mused, and did this weigh heavily on you? Thomas nodded, his hands trembling. I felt trapped sometimes, but I'd never hurt him. I was in my tent last night, trying to sleep. The heat, it keeps me awake. Poirot's next stop was Professor Klaus Werner, who stood near the tomb, studying a rubbing of hieroglyphs. His stern face softened only slightly as Poirot approached. Herr Poirot, this murder is a distraction. The tomb is what matters. Sir Reginald was a means to an end. Poirot raised an eyebrow. A harsh assessment, Professor. Did you clash with him? Werner's jaw tightened. He was a businessman, not a scholar. He wanted to ship artifacts to Europe for display against my advice. We argued, yes, but I had no reason to kill him. My work is here, in the inscriptions. And your whereabouts last night? Poirot asked. In my tent, translating texts, Werner replied curtly. I heard nothing until the scream. Finally, Poirot found Maggie Trent perched on a crate, her pen flying across her notebook. Her auburn hair was tied back, and her eyes sparkled with a mix of excitement and defiance. Monsieur Poirot, this is the story of a lifetime, a murder in the shadow of the pyramids. My readers will eat it up. Poirot regarded her with amusement. And what did Sir Reginald think of your enthusiasm? Maggie's smile faded slightly. He didn't like me snooping, said I was stirring up trouble, asking too many questions about the dig's finances. He threatened to have me sent back to New York, but I'm not easily scared off. Where were you when he was killed? Poirot asked. Writing in my tent, she said promptly. I heard the scream and ran out, same as everyone else. As Poirot returned to his tent, the sun now high and merciless, he pondered the mosaic of motives. Lady Beatrice's resentment, Dr. Carver's professional frustrations, Thomas's debt, Werner's disdain, Maggie's ambition. Each was a piece of the puzzle, but none yet formed a clear picture. He sat at his small desk, sipping water, and murmured to Hastings, who had joined him. The desert, mon ami, it hides many secrets, but the human heart, it hides more. Hastings frowned. Do you think one of them is lying, Poirot? Poirot's eyes gleamed. They all lie, in their own way, but the truth, it will emerge, like an artifact from the sand. Chapter 4. The Clue of the Broken Seal. The midday sun beat down on the Saqqara encampment, turning the sand into a shimmering furnace that tested the endurance of all who toiled beneath it. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the heat, stood before the storage tent, his eyes fixed on the heavy padlock that guarded its entrance. The murder of Sir Reginald Ashbourne had cast a long shadow over the expedition, and the air was thick with unspoken accusations. Poirot, his suit pristine despite the dust, had resolved to examine the scene of the theft that had furnished the killer with the ceremonial dagger. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, stood at his side, fanning himself with a crumpled newspaper, his brow furrowed with unease. "Dash it all, Poirot," Hastings said, squinting against the glare. "That dagger didn't walk out of the tent on its own. Someone got in, and I'd wager they left a clue or two." Poirot's mustache curved slightly, a sign of his amusement at Hastings' enthusiasm. "Précisément, mon ami. The crime, it is like a mosaic. Each piece, however small, contributes to the whole. Let us see what this tent reveals." With Inspector Farouk's permission, Poirot entered the storage tent, accompanied by Dr. Evelyn Carver and Ibrahim Khalil, who carried the keys. The interior was dim, the air heavy with the scent of dry wood and ancient stone. Shelves lined the canvas walls, laden with artifacts carefully wrapped in cloth or nestled in padded crates. Poirot's gaze swept over the orderly chaos, but his attention was drawn to a small wooden box on a central table. Its lid was slightly ajar, and within an empty velvet lining bore the imprint of the missing dagger. Beside it lay a shattered clay seal, its fragments scattered like broken promises. The seal bore the cartouche of Vizier Caillemosset, its hieroglyphs stark against the terracotta surface. Poirot crouched, his gloved fingers delicately lifting a fragment. "This seal," he said, his voice low. "It was broken recently. The clay is not yet brittle, and the edges are sharp. It was intact when the dagger was last seen, non?" Dr. Carver nodded, her expression taut. "Yes, Monsieur Poirot. I checked the box myself 2 nights ago. The seal was whole, the dagger secure. Only Ibrahim, Thomas, and I have access to this tent." Ibrahim, his face lined with worry, spoke up. "I locked the tent last night, as always. No one reported a breach. The key never left my possession." Poirot's eyes narrowed as he examined the padlock, now removed and resting in Inspector Farouk's hands. The metal bore faint scratches around the keyhole, subtle but unmistakable. "The lock was forced," Poirot declared, "but with care, to avoid detection. Yet Dr. Carver says the key was used. Most curious. Either the lock was tampered with, or someone had access to a key they should not have." Hastings, peering over Poirot's shoulder, ventured a theory. "Could it be a duplicate key, Poirot? Someone might have made a copy." Poirot inclined his head. "A possibility, mon ami, but one requiring foresight and opportunity. Let us consider, the dagger was chosen deliberately, not for convenience, but for its significance. It points to the tomb, perhaps to suggest a motive tied to the excavation itself." Leaving the tent, Poirot walked to the tomb's entrance, where the sand still bore the marks of last night's chaos. He studied the ground, noting the partial footprint he had observed before, a small, narrow impression, too delicate for Sir Reginald's heavy boots. "This footprint," he mused, "it belongs to someone else, someone who was here at the time of the murder, perhaps watching, perhaps acting." As they returned to the camp, Maggie Trent approached, her notebook tucked under her arm. Her auburn hair glinted in the sunlight, and her eyes held a spark of excitement. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice low, "I found something in Sir Reginald's tent this morning. I probably shouldn't have been poking around, but—" She produced a scrap of paper, its edges charred as if it had been partially burned. Scrawled in a hurried hand were the words, "Meet me at midnight." Poirot's eyes gleamed as he took the paper, holding it to a light. "Mademoiselle Tron, you are most resourceful. This note, it is a thread in our tapestry. Where exactly did you find it?" "In a corner of his tent, near the brazier," she replied. "It looked like someone tried to destroy it but didn't finish the job." Poirot tucked the note into his pocket, his mind racing. "A rendezvous at midnight, near the tomb. Sir Reginald was lured to his death. But by whom? And why burn the note only? To leave it half intact?" Hastings frowned. "Sounds like a sloppy job, Poirot. Maybe the killer was interrupted." "Or," Poirot countered, "they wished it to be found, to mislead us. The mind of the murderer, it is cunning, but not infallible." That afternoon, Poirot gathered Ibrahim and Dr. Carver once more, questioning them about the storage tent's security. Ibrahim insisted the key had remained with him, hung on a chain around his neck. Dr. Carver confirmed she kept her key in a locked drawer in her tent. Thomas Redfern, when summoned, appeared nervous, his hands fidgeting as he swore his key was secure in his satchel. Yet Poirot noted a hesitation in the young man's eyes, a flicker of unease that suggested more than he was saying. Returning to his tent, Poirot sat at his small desk, the charred note before him. He traced the handwriting, its loops and flourishes distinct yet unfamiliar. "This note," he said to Hastings, "it is the first whisper of the killer's intent. Sir Reginald was no random victim. He was summoned, and he went willingly, unaware of the danger." Hastings leaned back, his face troubled. "But why the dagger, Poirot? Why not a gun or a knife from the camp? It's so theatrical." Poirot's fingers tapped the desk rhythmically. "The dagger, mon ami, it is a symbol. It ties the crime to the tomb, perhaps to cast suspicion on those who work within it, Dr. Carver, Ibrahim, Thomas. Or perhaps it is a message, a warning. We must look beyond the act to the purpose behind it." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the dunes, Poirot felt the weight of the mystery deepen. The broken seal, the forced lock, the cryptic note, the delicate footprint. Each was a clue, yet none pointed directly to the killer. He knew the answer lay in the interplay of personalities, in the camp, in the secrets they guarded as fiercely as the tomb's treasures. "Hastings," Poirot said, rising, "tonight we must watch and listen. The killer believes they have outwitted us, but Hercule Poirot is not so easily deceived. The truth, it is like the sand. It shifts, but it cannot hide forever." Chapter 5. Shadows of the Past. The twilight over Saqqara draped the encampment in a veil of indigo, the air cooling as the desert relinquished the day's fierce heat. The step pyramid stood sentinel in the distance, its jagged silhouette a reminder of the ancient secrets buried beneath the sands. Hercule Poirot, his mind as sharp as the starlight above, stood before the assembled expedition team in the central tent, where lanterns cast flickering shadows on the canvas walls. The murder of Sir Reginald Ashbourne had tightened the bonds of suspicion among the group, and Poirot knew that to unravel the crime, he must delve into the past, both the expedition's and its members. The little gray cells, as he called them, were weaving a pattern from the threads of evidence: the ceremonial dagger, the broken seal, the charred note, the delicate footprint. But it was the hidden histories of those around him that held the key. Captain Hastings, seated on a folding chair, shifted uneasily as the group gathered. "Poirot," he whispered. "This lot looks like they'd rather be anywhere else. Do you really think the killer's among them?" Poirot's eyes gleamed in the lamplight. "Mon ami, the killer is not only among us, but is watching, listening, calculating. The past, it is a mirror, and tonight we shall hold it up to reflect the truth." He addressed the group, his voice calm yet commanding, each word chosen with precision. "Mesdames et messieurs, the murder of Sir Reginald was no act of chance. It was a crime woven with intent, its threads rooted in secrets long buried. To find the killer, we must uncover what Sir Reginald knew and what he feared." Poirot turned first to Inspector Farouk, who had joined the gathering, his notebook open. "Inspector, you have made inquiries into Sir Reginald's past. What have you learned?" Farouk cleared his throat, his stern face softened by the gravity of his findings. Sir Reginald Ashbourne was not always the respectable financier he appeared. 15 years ago, he was implicated in a scandal involving the smuggling of Egyptian artifacts to Europe. The charges were dropped for lack of evidence, but whispers of his involvement persisted. Some believed he funded this expedition to restore his reputation, or to profit from further dealings. A murmur rippled through the group. Lady Beatrice Ashbourne, her face pale beneath her powdered complexion, clutched her shawl. "That's absurd," she said, her voice sharp. "Reginald left that life behind. He was devoted to this dig, to preserving history." Poirot's gaze fixed on her. "And yet, madame, the past, it has a way of clinging, like sand in one's shoes. Did you know of these dealings?" Lady Beatrice hesitated, her fingers tightening on the shawl. "I heard rumors long ago, but Reginald assured me they were false. I believed him." Poirot nodded, turning to Professor Klaus Werner, whose stern features were set in a scowl. "Professor, you are a man of scholarship. Were you aware of Sir Reginald's history?" Werner's eyes narrowed. "I knew of it, Herr Poirot. In academic circles, such scandals are not easily forgotten. I thought he had changed, but men like him rarely do. Still, my concern was the tomb, not his past." Poirot's attention shifted to Dr. Evelyn Carver, who stood rigid, her hands clasped before her. "Madame, you worked closely with Sir Reginald. Did he ever speak of his earlier ventures?" Dr. Carver's jaw tightened, and she met Poirot's gaze with defiance. "He alluded to mistakes, yes, but nothing specific. 2 nights ago, however, he approached me in private. He proposed selling some lesser artifacts on the black market to secure more funding for the dig. I refused outright. It was unethical, a betrayal of our work." A gasp escaped Maggie Trent, who was scribbling in her notebook. Poirot turned to her. "Mademoiselle, you have a nose for secrets. Did you uncover anything about Sir Reginald's intentions?" Maggie's lips curved in a wry smile. "I heard him arguing with Ibrahim about missing funds a few days ago. I didn't catch the details, but Sir Reginald was furious, accusing someone of mismanagement. I tried to dig deeper, but he caught me eavesdropping and told me to mind my own business." Ibrahim Khalil, standing at the tent's edge, shook his head vigorously. "I manage the workers' wages, Monsieur Poirot, nothing more. Sir Reginald questioned my accounts, but I showed him every receipt. I am no thief." Poirot raised a hand for silence, his mind piecing together the fragments. The smuggling scandal, the proposed black market deal, the argument over funds, all pointed to Sir Reginald's past as a catalyst for his death. But how did they connect to the dagger, the note, the broken seal? As the meeting dispersed, the camp settled into an uneasy quiet. Poirot, however, was not ready to rest. He beckoned Hastings to follow him to Sir Reginald's tent, where the financier's belongings remained untouched. The interior was orderly, with a desk strewn with papers, a leather-bound journal, and a small brazier where the half-burned note had been found. Poirot sifted through the papers, finding invoices for the expedition, letters from London banks, and a cryptic note in Sir Reginald's hand. K suspects. Must act soon. K, Poirot murmured. Klaus Werner? Or perhaps Caillemouset, the vizier whose tomb we disturb. The mind of the victim, it holds clues, even in death. Hastings, peering over his shoulder, frowned. Sounds like Sir Reginald was worried about someone. But who? Before Poirot could reply, a shout pierced the night. The two men rushed outside to find the camp in uproar once more. Thomas Redfern lay crumpled near the tomb's entrance, a gash on his forehead oozing blood. A heavy chisel, smeared with crimson, lay beside him in the sand. Dr. Carver knelt at his side, pressing a cloth to the wound, while Ibrahim called for water. Poirot examined the scene, his expression grave. Monsieur Redfern, he has seen something he should not. This was no accident, Hastings. The killer grows bold, striking to silence a witness. Thomas, regaining consciousness, groaned. I saw someone, he whispered, his voice weak. Near the tomb, after dark. I followed. Then, nothing. Poirot leaned closer. Who, monsieur? Who did you see? Thomas's eyes fluttered, his words slurred. Too dark, a shadow, then the blow. As Dr. Carver tended to Thomas, Poirot studied the chisel. It was a tool from the dig, its handle worn from use, accessible to anyone in the camp. The attack, like the murder, was calculated, yet it lacked the precision of the dagger's thrust. The killer, Poirot said to Hastings. They are desperate now. Their plan, it begins to unravel. Returning to his tent, Poirot sat in the lamplight, the charred note and Sir Reginald's journal before him. The past, he realized, was not merely a backdrop, but a motive. Someone in the camp, perhaps driven by greed, fear, or vengeance, had used Sir Reginald's history against him. The attack on Thomas suggested a second thread, a witness who had come too close to the truth. Hastings, Poirot said, his voice low. The shadows of the past, they stretch long across this desert, but tomorrow we shall bring them into the light. Chapter 6. The Tomb's Secret. The dawn broke over Saqqara with a quiet ferocity, the first rays of sunlight piercing the desert's chill and illuminating the ancient stones of the necropolis. The encampment stirred uneasily, the attack on Thomas Redfern compounding the fear sown by Sir Reginald Ashbourne's murder. Hercule Poirot, his morning coffee untouched, stood at the entrance to the tomb of Vizier Caillemouset, his eyes tracing the weathered hieroglyphs that framed the dark passage. The air carried a faint mustiness, a whisper of antiquity that seemed to mock the modern tragedy unfolding above. Captain Hastings, his face drawn from a sleepless night, joined him, his hat tilted against the rising sun. Poirot, Hastings said, his voice low. This business with young Redfern, it's got everyone on edge. Do you think the killer's trying to scare us all off? Poirot's mustache twitched, his gaze unwavering. Non, mon ami. The attack was not to frighten, but to silence. Monsieur Redfern saw something, or someone, that threatens the killer's design. We must uncover what lies within this tomb, for it holds more than relics. It holds the truth." With Inspector Farouk's approval, Poirot entered the tomb, accompanied by Dr. Evelyn Carver and Professor Klaus Werner, whose expertise was needed to navigate the chamber's secrets. The passage descended steeply, its walls carved with intricate scenes of offerings and deities. The air grew cooler, heavier, as they reached the antechamber where the ceremonial dagger had been found. Lanterns cast long shadows, and Poirot's keen eyes scanned the space, noting the neatly arranged artifacts: pottery, alabaster jars, a gilded statuette of Anubis. Dr. Carver pointed to a stone shelf where the dagger had rested. "It was here, Monsieur Poirot, sealed in a wooden box. The seal was intact until 2 nights ago, as I told you." Poirot nodded, his fingers brushing the shelf's edge. And yet, the box was opened, the seal broken, the dagger taken. This chamber, it is a stage, and the killer has used it to set their scene. Professor Werner, his expression dour, gestured to the walls, where hieroglyphs glowed faintly under the lantern's light. "These inscriptions," he said, his German accent clipped. "They tell of Kayamwaset's life, his devotion to Ma'at, the goddess of truth and order. But there is also a warning, a curse. He who defiles this sacred place shall know death's embrace." Hastings shivered. "A curse, Poirot? Surely you don't believe—" Poirot cut him off with a raised hand. "The curse, mon ami, it is but words on stone. Yet someone has used it, perhaps to sow fear, or to cloak their crime in superstition. The dagger's theft was no mere theft. It was a deliberate choice to evoke this ancient threat." Leaving the tomb, Poirot returned to the camp, where Thomas Redfern, his head bandaged, sat under a canopy, sipping water. His face was pale, but his eyes were alert. Poirot sat beside him, his tone gentle yet probing. "Monsieur Redfern, you said you saw a shadow near the tomb. Can you recall anything more? A sound? A scent? A movement?" Thomas frowned, his fingers gripping the cup. "It was dark, Monsieur Poirot. I couldn't sleep, so I walked toward the tomb, thinking I'd check the entrance. I saw someone moving, quick, like they didn't want to be seen. I called out, but then something struck me. I smelled sandalwood, maybe, before everything went black." Poirot's eyes narrowed. Sandalwood, a distinctive scent uncommon in the camp's dust and sweat. He filed the detail away, his mind turning to the group's alibis. Lady Beatrice favored jasmine, Dr. Carver used no perfume, and Maggie Trent's scent was a sharp citrus. Could it be a clue or a distraction? Later, Poirot confronted Maggie Trent, who was typing furiously on a portable typewriter near her tent. Her auburn hair was tied back, her face flushed with the excitement of her story. "Mademoiselle," Poirot began, "you mentioned an argument between Sir Reginald and Ibrahim about missing funds. Can you recall anything specific?" Maggie paused, her fingers hovering over the keys. "It was 3 days ago, near the storage tent. Sir Reginald was red in the face, shouting about discrepancies in the payroll. Ibrahim kept saying the books were clean, but Sir Reginald wouldn't listen. He said something about proving it, or he'd take action. I didn't hear the rest. Lady Beatrice caught me lingering and shooed me away." Poirot sought Ibrahim next, finding him overseeing workers near the excavation site. The overseer's face was etched with worry, his hands busy with a ledger. "Monsieur Khalil," Poirot said, "Sir Reginald accused you of mismanaging funds. What was the nature of this dispute?" Ibrahim's eyes darkened. "It was a misunderstanding, Monsieur Poirot. Sir Reginald believed money was missing from the workers' wages. I showed him every record, every piastre accounted for. He was, not himself, suspicious of everyone. I think his past made him see enemies where there were none. Poirot's mind raced. The argument, the sandalwood scent, the tomb's curse. All were pieces of a puzzle, but the picture remained elusive. He returned to the central tent where he found a new clue. A small vial of sandalwood oil, half buried in the sand near the entrance. It was unmarked, its stopper loose, as if discarded in haste. Poirot pocketed it, his thoughts turning to the camp's dynamics. Who used such a scent, and why leave it behind? As evening fell, Poirot gathered his notes, the charred "Meet me at midnight" scrap, and Sir Reginald's journal entry. K suspects. Must act soon. Foremost in his mind. The reference to K gnawed at him. Was it Klaus Werner, whose disdain for Sir Reginald was clear, or a misdirection pointing to the tomb's ancient occupant? Hastings, Poirot said as they sat in his tent. The killer is growing reckless. The attack on Redfern, the vial of oil, these are mistakes. They believe they can outwit Hercule Poirot, but they underestimate the power of order and method. Hastings leaned forward, his voice eager. So, what's next, Poirot? Another interrogation? Poirot's eyes gleamed. We watch, mon ami. The killer is among us and they will act again. The tomb's secret is not in its stones, but in the hearts of those who disturb it. Tomorrow, we shall tighten the net. Chapter 7. The Final Revelation. The first light of dawn crept over the Saqqara necropolis, casting a pale glow across the dunes and bathing the encampment in a serene stillness that belied the tension simmering beneath. The step pyramid loomed in the distance, its ancient stones a silent witness to the drama unfolding below. Hercule Poirot, his suit pressed and his mustache meticulously groomed, stood before the assembled expedition team in the central tent, where the air was thick with anticipation. The murder of Sir Reginald Ashbourne and the attack on Thomas Redfern had woven a web of suspicion, and Poirot knew the time had come to unravel it. The clues, the ceremonial dagger, the broken seal, the charred note, the sandalwood vial, the cryptic journal entry, had formed a pattern in his mind, and now, with the precision of a master weaver, he would reveal the tapestry of the crime. Captain Hastings, seated at Poirot's side, leaned forward, his eyes bright with expectation. Poirot, you've got that look, he whispered. You've solved it, haven't you? Poirot's lips curved faintly. The little gray cells, mon ami, they have worked tirelessly. Today we bring the truth into the light. The group sat in a semicircle, their faces a study in contrasts. Lady Beatrice Ashbourne, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes wary. Dr. Evelyn Carver, composed but tense, her fingers tapping a silent rhythm. Thomas Redfern, his head still bandaged, his expression haunted. Professor Klaus Werner, his stern features set in defiance. Ibrahim Khalil, his tasbih beads clicking softly. And Maggie Trent, her notebook poised, her gaze sharp with curiosity. Inspector Farouk stood at the tent's entrance, his constables flanking him, ready to act. Poirot began, his voice clear and deliberate, each word a step toward revelation. Mesdames et messieurs, the murder of Sir Reginald Ashbourne was no act of passion or chance. It was a crime of calculation, designed to deceive, to point fingers at the tomb, at a curse, at petty thefts. But Hercule Poirot sees through such masquerades. Let us reconstruct the truth. He held up the charred note, It scrawled, "Meet me at midnight." Barely legible. This note lured Sir Reginald to the tomb where he met his death. It was written in haste, yet left half-burned, as if to be found. A clever touch, but not clever enough. Turning to Lady Beatrice, Poirot's eyes softened, but his tone was firm. "Madame, you spoke of a strained marriage, of Sir Reginald's obsession with the dig, of his changed will. But you omitted a crucial truth. You knew of his past as a smuggler. You feared he would return to those ways, disgracing you and jeoparding your inheritance. Is it not so?" Lady Beatrice's face paled, her voice trembling. I suspected, yes, but I loved him, Monsieur Poirot. I would never—" Poirot raised a hand. "You did not act alone, madame. The note, it bears the handwriting of another." He turned to Professor Werner, whose jaw tightened. "Herr Werner, you supplied the dagger, taken from the storage tent with a key you obtained through subterfuge. You resented Sir Reginald's interference, his plans to sell artifacts, his threat to your scholarly control. You saw a chance to eliminate him and cast suspicion on the dig itself." Werner rose, his voice sharp. "This is preposterous. I had no reason to kill him. My work is my life, not murder." Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "The handwriting on the note, Herr Werner, it matches a sample from your field notes, which I examined this morning. And the sandalwood oil found near the tent, it is a scent you favor, is it not? Thomas Redfern smelled it the night he was attacked, when you struck him to silence his suspicions." A gasp rippled through the group. Thomas's eyes widened, and Dr. Carver's hand flew to her mouth. Maggie Trent's pen froze, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of the revelation. Poirot continued, pacing slowly. "The plan was simple, yet audacious. Lady Beatrice, you wrote to Sir Reginald, luring him to the tomb with the promise of a secret meeting. You knew his habits, his late-night walks. Professor Werner, you waited in the shadows, the dagger in hand, stolen from the tent after forcing the lock. The broken seal was your error, left behind in your haste. Together, you orchestrated a murder to secure your futures. Lady Beatrice, your inheritance. Werner, your control over the artifacts." Lady Beatrice sobbed, her composure crumbling. "It wasn't meant to go so far. I only wanted to scare him, to make him stop his reckless plans. Klaus said it would be quick, clean." Werner lunged forward, his face red. "Silence, you fool." But Inspector Farouk's constables seized him, pinning his arms. Poirot's voice remained calm. "The attack on Monsieur Redfern was your final mistake. He saw you, Herr Werner, near the tomb, and you struck him with a chisel to keep him silent. But the truth, it cannot be buried like the treasures of Kemwaset." Ibrahim Khalil shook his head, his prayers ceasing. "I knew nothing of this, Monsieur Poirot, I swear it." Dr. Carver spoke, her voice steady. "I suspected Sir Reginald's intentions, but I never imagined this conspiracy." Maggie Trent closed her notebook, her smile wry. "Well, Monsieur Poirot, you've given me the scoop of the century." Inspector Farouk stepped forward, his face grim. "Lady Beatrice Ashbourne, Professor Klaus Werner, you are under arrest for the murder of Sir Reginald Ashbourne and the assault on Thomas Redfern." The constables led them away, Lady Beatrice weeping, Werner silent and defiant. As the group dispersed, Poirot turned to Hastings, who was shaking his head in amazement. "By Jove, Poirot, you've done it again. How did you know?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "The little gray cells, mon ami, the note, the sandalwood, the journal's K. Each was a thread, and together they wove the truth. The killer's mistake was to underestimate the power of order and method. The camp fell silent, the weight of the revelation settling like dust. Poirot gazed at the tomb, its entrance dark and unyielding. The desert, Hastings, it keeps its secrets, but no secret can withstand the scrutiny of Hercule Poirot. Chapter 8. The Desert's Silence. The sun rose over the Saqqara necropolis, its golden light spilling across the dunes and bathing the ancient stones in a warm glow. The encampment, so recently a stage for murder and betrayal, stirred with a tentative sense of renewal. The arrest of Lady Beatrice Ashbourne and Professor Klaus Werner had lifted the shadow of fear, and the expedition team, though shaken, began to reclaim their purpose. Hercule Poirot stood at the edge of the camp, his suit immaculate despite the desert's dust, his hands clasped behind his back as he gazed at the step pyramid. Its weathered silhouette seemed to nod in approval, as if the ancient spirits of the necropolis were satisfied that justice had been served. Captain Hastings joined him, his face brighter than it had been in days, though his eyes still held a trace of astonishment. "Poirot, old chap," he said, adjusting his hat. "You've outdone yourself this time. Unraveling that plot, Lady Beatrice and Werner of all people. I'd never have guessed they were in cahoots." Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. "The human heart, mon ami, it is a labyrinth. But with order and method, even the most tangled paths lead to the truth. The little gray cells, they do not rest until the puzzle is complete." The camp buzzed with subdued activity. Dr. Evelyn Carver, now free of suspicion, stood at the tomb's entrance, directing workers with renewed vigor. Her khaki attire was streaked with dust, but her eyes shone with determination. She approached Poirot, a rare smile softening her stern features. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, "your work has saved this expedition. Sir Reginald's death was a tragedy, but we will continue, and we will do so with integrity. No black market dealings, no shortcuts. The tomb of Camoisset deserves better." Poirot inclined his head. "Madame, your dedication to the truth of history, it is admirable. Continue your work and let the past speak through you." Thomas Redfern, his head still bandaged but his spirits lifted, sat under a canopy, sketching artifacts with a steady hand. He glanced at Poirot, his voice earnest. "I owe you my life, Monsieur Poirot. If you hadn't caught them, I might have been next." Poirot waved a hand dismissively. "Non, non, Monsieur Redfern. It is the killer's arrogance that undid them. You are safe now, and your work, it will endure." Maggie Trent, her auburn hair catching the sunlight, approached with her notebook tucked under her arm. Her smile was wide, her eyes alight with the thrill of a story that would captivate her readers. "Monsieur Poirot, you're a marvel," she said, her American accent sharp with enthusiasm. "This scoop, Murder in the Shadow of the Pyramids, it's going to make waves back in New York. I'm half tempted to write a book about you." Poirot chuckled softly. "Mademoiselle, it is merely the application of logic, the arrangement of facts in their proper order. But if you must write, tell your readers that Hercule Poirot seeks only the truth, not the spotlight." As the morning progressed, Inspector Farouk oversaw the final arrangements for Lady Beatrice and Professor Werner's transfer to Cairo for trial. The camp's workers, their initial wariness replaced by gratitude, offered Poirot nods of respect as they passed. Ibrahim Khalil, his tasbih beads quiet in his hands, approached with a solemn bow. "Monsieur Poirot, you have brought peace to this place. May Allah guide you always." Poirot returned the gesture with a nod. "And you, Monsieur Khalil, your honesty, it was a beacon in this storm." By noon, Poirot and Hastings prepared to depart, their bags packed and a car waiting to take them to Cairo. The desert stretched before them, vast and enigmatic, its secrets now one fewer. Hastings, settling into the car, glanced at Poirot. "What's next, Poirot? A holiday, perhaps? You've earned a rest." Poirot's eyes twinkled as he adjusted his hat. "A rest, mon ami? Perhaps. But the world, it is full of mysteries, and Hercule Poirot is never far from their call. The desert, it has spoken, but there are other places, other puzzles, waiting." As the car rolled away, kicking up clouds of dust, Poirot gazed out at the ancient tombs, their shadows stretching across the sands. "The past," he murmured. "It is a keeper of secrets, but the truth, it shines brighter than the sun. And that, Hastings, is the triumph of the little gray cells." The necropolis faded into the distance, and the desert fell silent once more, its mysteries undisturbed until the next tale demanded to be told.